When talking about some of the greatest albums of all time, you probably won't have to wait too long before you see someone bringing up Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. The importance, impact, and influence this album had on the music industry is very well documented through multiple books and several articles written about it. And as a Beatles fan myself, I have to say that I'm a really big fan of this album, and I love almost every single song here, so making a video ranking every song on the record from worst to best was kind of pointless. One would think that if you like an album and if you think it's one of the greatest albums ever, then that means that every single song on the record is amazing, right? But that is not necessarily true, mainly because if you listen to as much music as I do, you know that a great album doesn't always have the best songs, especially, and this seems to be like the exact case when it comes to Sgt. Pepper's, because there are some songs in this album that I don't really like at all, and actually some of them are borderline annoying, which is the reason why I thought that making this video was actually a pretty good idea. Before we get into it, I'm going to explain the rules. First of all, the title track, you know, there's two of them. There's the intro and then there's the reprised version. We're kind of counted as one. I don't think there's any point to, you know, taking both songs because they're basically the same. One is a remixed version of the first one. Also, the songs are going to be ranked based on a mix between quality and importance for the album, because it's true that songs like Within You Without You are excellent songs and extremely influential, but I think that I'm not the only one who believes that the song doesn't really match the energy of Sgt. Pepper's, as well as songs like Getting Better or Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, so that's going to play a huge part when it comes to the placement of the track. And obviously, as I always say in this sort of videos, this is only my personal opinion, so if you have your own, and I'm pretty sure you do, go ahead and leave it down below in the comments so I can check it out and give you my opinion on your opinion. I don't want to make this intro too long, so let's go on with number 12. I hate the idea of my videos being predictable. I would like to make the most outrageous list possible to make sure you guys put your own list in the comment section. That's the best way to motivate you guys to actually write stuff in the comments, by saying outrageous things, because it seems to sparkle some sort of flame in you guys. However, I also want to be honest, and if I'm being honest with myself, putting a track that's not Good Morning at number 12 would be a big fat lie, because this track is borderline annoying. How aggressively produced the vocals are, the abstract lyricism that apparently is based on a Kellogg's commercial, and then there's the instrumentation with those intrusive horns and those out of context animal sounds. It's just a really bad song, and you know, it's a perfect example of how John Lennon was a hit or miss on this album, creating some of the best songs on the record, but also some that are just annoying. Which leads me to number 11, being For the Benefit of Mr. Kite. While I believe this song blends in with the rest of the album way better, and it doesn't kill the pace of the album as Good Morning does, I do think that this track is still annoying. I don't see myself listening to this track in any other context that's not Sgt. Pepper's. I've never played this song outside of the album, by the way. Well, I did once, and it was when I was making this video and I needed to take notes to talk about the song, because another thing about the track is how extremely forgettable it is. I do like the little story, like the lore behind it being based on a circus poster, and this whole instrumentation inspired by circus sounds I think is very well done. I think that, you know, you get the message. However, it doesn't mean that it's a good message or that it's an enjoyable one, which is the reason why it finds itself at number 11. Once again, John Lennon just either he made a great song on this album or he made a really bad one, and this is the latter. I know many of you guys are gonna kill me probably for the placement of Within You Without You. It is one of the most important songs in the Indian classical scene. After this song was released, the popularity of that genre peaked, and there was a lot of great albums that were discovered thanks to George Harrison putting this song here. Also, the fact that it was way more accessible than a song like Love You Too from Revolver is, you know, another factor why the genre actually peaked in popularity. However, even though I do think the track is super interesting, I love the different layers in the instrumentation. I love how he seems to be really comfortable talking about his newfound passion for Hinduism. I believe that there's a slight finger pointing trend on the lyrics in this song that I don't really connect with. This narrative of I believe in this God and you don't, therefore I'm smarter than you or I'm wiser than you. I don't really appreciate those sort of lyrics, and also the fact that it kind of breaks the pace of the album is another big issue for me. This song comes right after Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite inside the album, and you know, up to that point, even though Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite is not my favorite, it's definitely not a slow track or a track track that doesn't match with the rest of the album. And the Indian classical nature of this song does have this psychedelic, hypnotic factor that a psychedelic song usually has, in my opinion, or the way I see it. It doesn't really blend into the album that well. It feels kind of weird, which is why I put it at number 10. As a standalone track, it's really important, really impactful, and a good song, but inside the album, I think that it's kind of misplaced. You could have definitely replaced a song like this with maybe Strawberry Fields Forever, one of the greatest songs ever made. The fact that they decided to put songs like this instead of those, it baffles me. Now, it is from this point that we start to get to the really good tracks. The title track, I know that a lot of you guys are going to hate me for putting it so low on the list, but it is one of the greatest albums ever made, so we do have quite a few songs to go through before we get to number 1. And the fact that this song doesn't really have the same psychedelic elements in its instrumentation is what puts it so low on the list. Also, the fact that it's so short, but the track is really good and it is really enjoyable. I love the way Paul McCartney sounds. Actually, it's one of my favorite vocal performances by Paul McCartney. It is kind of impressive, actually. Then there's the guitar and the drums and the narrative being introduced. That this is supposed to be a concept album, not only in its instrumentation but also its narrative. And yes, I know the narrative was lost after with a little help of my friends, but that doesn't really mean that this song didn't do a good job at introducing the story, which is the reason why I like it so much. It only falls on number 9 because I believe that the songs that are above this one are way more enjoyable and impactful for the whole album and for the band's discography overall. But it is a great track. I love how sharp everything sounds. It's just really good. Now, I have to say, you guys, that being someone who spends a lot of time talking about the songs he loves and hate and explaining the reasons why, not being able to explain why I love Fixing a Hole is kind of embarrassing for me. Now, I could say that I love the instrumentation and the production, how well it blends with the psychedelic nature of Sgt. Pepper's. I could also say I love the melody, because I do. I love how Paul McCartney performs in this track, how careless and free he sounds in every single song on this album. I love the way that the lyrics seem to allude to some sort of drug use, and actually this was confirmed by Paul McCartney, the whole Fixing a Hole reference. How he talks about Paul McCartney's fame and how it affected his whole life, with people standing outside of his house waiting for him to come out to ask for an autograph and things like that. I love this song, but I can't really quite put my finger on why I love it. That's the reason why I don't put it higher up the list. But if I knew why, if I could explain the reasons why I like it so much, as I do with every other track on this list, I think I would put it higher. But overall, I think it's just extremely enjoyable, extremely colorful, and just very well produced, and it brings it all the way up to number 8. It is at this point on the list that we really get to the heavy hitters in terms of enjoyability, because Getting Better is a song that I play so often when I'm on my way to work, when I'm taking a shower, when I'm not having the best day ever. This song can cheer you up immediately. How sharp the guitar, the drums, and the piano sound, adding to the colorful nature of the track, allowing the track to blend really well into the album. Definitely one of my favorite moments, and the reason why I'm putting it here, not higher, because if it was only based on enjoyability, I think this would be in the top 5, but because there's other factors like how popular the track was, how much it meant in terms of groundbreakingness for the band and their own songwriting process, there's nothing that psychedelical going on in this song, so I can't really put it any higher, because the songs that are above it are more meaningful when it comes to the songwriting process and how much it changed compared to what they were doing in Revolver. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that this song is still extremely enjoyable and it can get you in a good mood almost immediately, and for that reason it finds itself at number 7. Now, I know, you guys, that this is one of the most recognizable songs, not only from Sgt. Pepper's but from the band's discography, so why on earth am I putting it at number 6? Well, popularity is really important for a song because it's the amount of people you reach and how many people enjoy your song. There's other things that should be considered when it comes to placing a song high or low in a list, and when it comes to With a Little Help of My Friends, there's nothing that interesting going on in the song's instrumentation for me to put it higher than songs like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, A Day in the Life, or maybe Lovely Rita. It's a very simple song, and it's actually its simple nature nature that makes the song so enjoyable. The dynamics between Ringo and the rest of the band is also very cute, with the band asking a question and Ringo answering the question. It also has some of the most relatable lyrics in the history of music, in my opinion, with things like "Do you believe in love at first sight?" and Ringo answering, "Yes, I'm certain, but it happens all the time." Like, can you not relate to that? This is a song that I don't really have to pay attention to in order to enjoy it, and I really do appreciate that in a song, especially in an album like Sgt. Pepper's, where it seems like in order to get the full experience out of it, you have to pay attention to every single detail and every single sound that comes out of the album. So I do like the fact that there are songs like "With a Little Help of My Friends" that allow you to rest from the whole complexity that surrounds the album. I do like also the fact that this song is also inside the narrative that the album was supposed to have. This is the last song on the album that that finds itself inside the narrative. I think it should give the track a few extra points. I love this song. It's truly one of the most enjoyable tracks of all time, and the only reason why it's not higher up the list, even though it's probably the song I've heard the most in the entire album, is because the songs above it are more interesting in my opinion. To be honest with you guys, when it comes to the top 5, it gets really confusing because I have to say, I don't find myself listening to "She's Leaving Home" that often. Actually, there's very few cases where I find myself listening to this song outside of the album. That would mean that it's not as enjoyable as many other songs below it. So why is this song in the top 5? Well, the main reason is because I think it's such an important song for the band's discography. Number one, it's the only track that didn't have any of the band members participating in the instrumentation. And Paul McCartney tells a story with John Lennon as backing vocals, and this story is told relying heavily on string arrangements and harps, as Paul tells a story about a lady who leaves her home after she comes of age to go with a man, and the whole story is told through the perspective of the parents reading a note she left behind. It's a silly narrative. It's kind of melodramatic, and it's not the main catch of the song. The main catch for me is how elegant and fancy Paul McCartney sounds in every single one of the verses of this song. This is probably one of my favorite vocal performances from him. I mean, it's like acting in the middle of a song. It's like an acting performance, but with your voice, and that is exactly why I love this song so much. I do enjoy the hell out of this track, and I think it fits really well. The harp creates that psychedelic tone that makes the song blend really well into the album. There's also this satirical undertone that I can hear, especially in the chorus, that makes me feel like they weren't taking the story seriously, and I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people who think that way too. I do see other songs being more enjoyable overall and being more connected to the whole idea of Sgt. Pepper's. However, I do think this track deserves to be in the top 5 because of how different it is and how unique it is inside the Beatles discography. This is the point in the video where I know a lot of you guys are gonna dislike the video or are gonna say something mean in the comments, because putting "When I'm 64," a traditional dance hall song, at number 4 in one of the most groundbreaking albums of all time is ridiculous. And I know it is, but I have to say it. This is probably the song, along with number 3, the song that I've listened to the most in this album. Outside of this record, the amount of times during the week I play "When I'm 64" and "Lovely Rita" is ridiculous. I play it so often that I'm pretty sure I could play every single instrument without listening to the song once more before trying. The amount of charm I get from this song, how cute it is, how it tells the story of, you having the idea of growing old with the person you love, is such a pretty concept that I can't help but smile and feel better automatically after I listen to this song. Once again, the instrumentation doesn't have a lot going for it. Maybe there's a few musical passages where the piano is kind of trippy, dreamy, daydream kind of thing, but overall it's a very simple dancehall traditional pop song that was inspired by Frank Sinatra and his material in the 50s, and actually Paul McCartney wrote this song when he was 17, years prior to, Sgt. Pepper's even being conceived. So one would think that this song kind of breaks the pace of the album, and it kind of does, but Paul's high-pitched vocals, the instrumentation being so simple, and the lyrical concept being so cute, I think it matches with the colorful energy of Sgt. Pepper's, which is the reason why I think this track belongs to Sgt. Pepper's, and I think that it deserves to be at number 4. I know that you guys may hate me for it, but I just can't put this track anywhere lower, and actually, if it were for me, I would put it a little bit higher, but I have to make it make sense too, which is why it's staying at number 4. I don't want you guys to hate me for too long, So let's go on with number 3. Putting Lovely Rita right next to A Day in the Life and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds in the top 3 best song out of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, one of the greatest albums ever made, may sound kind of crazy, but the thing is that I love this song so much that if I were to put it anywhere that's not top 3, I would be lying to myself, and as a result I would be lying to you guys. And I want to make sure that after you leave one of my videos, you have my fully honest opinion on whatever it is I'm talking about. And when it comes to Sgt. Pepper's, I believe that when it comes to Lovely Rita is one of the most enjoyable songs, not only from Sgt. Pepper's but also from the entirety of the Beatles discography, mainly because of how cute the whole concept of the song is, you know, falling in love with a meter maid that's writing you a ticket or it's writing someone else a ticket. I love the way Paul's voice is produced in here. I love the melody. I love how shiny and dreamy the instrumental sounds. I love the way that the backing vocals help the track be even more psychedelic than it already is, with all these colorful sounds found in the instrumentation. I love how it blends into the album. I love how it connects so well to the previous track and the next. I love so many things about this record in and out the album that I can't help but put it in the top 3. Mainly, I think that the main reason why I want to give this song so much credit is because how often I listen to this song. If I listen to When I'm 64 quite a lot, and probably the most out of every song on the album, Lovely Rita is way up there as well. You know, I believe that the only reason why I'm putting this above When I'm 64 is because the instrumentation is way more interesting. The way Paul's voice is produced is way more interesting. Therefore, I think it deserves to be a little higher. But I do understand that when someone argues that songs like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and A Day in the Lives are miles above this song, and even songs like Within You Without You or Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, for example, should be higher than this one due to how unique they are, due to how unique their instrumentation is, which is the whole shtick with Sgt. Pepper's. You know, this album's not only good, but it was also extremely different from anything else that pop, you know, meant at the time. So why would I put a song that feels so traditional and so old-fashioned so high up the list? Purely because of how colorful and enjoyable it is. You know, I believe that at the end of the day, you're supposed to enjoy music, and there's only a handful of tracks in the Beatles discography that I enjoy as much as I do Lovely Rita, which is why I'm gonna leave it in the top 3, and I think it deserves to be here. Feel free to give me your own list in the comments. Feel free to say that this is supposed to be the last song, you know, in terms of quality, but for me, it's extremely enjoyable, and that's why I'm gonna keep it here. Now, before we get into the top 2, I have to say that the 2 songs we're about to talk about right now are way more important, miles above every other song we've talked about so far, because this album overall meant a huge revolution for music, led a huge revolution in the music industry in the 60s, but it was protagonized by the next 2 songs we're talking about right now. They're some of the most important tracks in the history of psychedelic music and music overall, and for that reason I think we should give the silver medal to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. One of the most important John Lennon songs, especially for him as a songwriter, because it meant a huge boost in confidence. It was the first time he actually made a song that was both weird and the most popular out of the album. It was always kind of falling behind Paul. You know, you see that in cases like I Am the Walrus and Hello Goodbye. You can see that with Nowhere Man and Paperback Writer, or maybe Tomorrow Never Knows and Got to Get You Into My Life, or Here, There and Everywhere. You know, it's so many examples where Paul McCartney was making a more accessible song, and it overshadowed John Lennon's attempt to do something groundbreaking with his own songwriting skills, you know. And this is the first time where no matter the track Paul put forth for the creation of Sgt. Pepper's, it was John Lennon who protagonized the revolution this time around with Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. This track is extremely influential. It led a lot of people like the Rolling Stones, for example, to include elements of psychedelic music into their own sound. It was just, if you track back all the influence this track had, not only in the 60s but also in the 70s, and even today there's people who quote this track as a massive source of inspiration. It goes to show that this song was not only a great addition to the album with its sharp sounds and, you know, the high-pitched vocals and the lyrics inspired in an Alice in Wonderland book, but it was also a super important factor in how the people perceived not only Sgt. Pepper's but also music as a form of art in the late 60s. So for that reason it goes in number 2, and the only reason why it's taking the silver and not the gold medal is because the one we have at number 1 is a totally totally different story. Because even though Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was massive for the legacy of the band, A Day in the Life transcends the Beatles and turns into the legacy of music itself. A lot of people argue that a song that's 4 minutes and 28 seconds cannot be as influential and as important for the development of music in the 60s, especially if you consider the fact that the last minute of the song is just a piano chord played in several different pianos at the same time to make sure it lasts for the whole minute, and it serves only to close the album and adds nothing to the song itself. So you only have 3 minutes and 28 seconds to make history. How is it that the Beatles made it? And when you listen to the track for the first time, you're hoping to hear this wall of sound and multiple different ideas coming together to create the ultimate psychedelic masterpiece, but you don't really have that. It's just a piano, John Lennon's echoed vocals, and a guitar singing about a news article on the papers. So why is it that this song is so important? Well, it's hard to tell. It's really hard to explain why this song gives such a timeless feeling every time you listen to it. I think that it's a combination of the melody, the chords, and the story that John Lennon is saying that creates this mysterious atmosphere surrounding the track. Then you have these crescendos that go from the lowest to the highest note in a matter of seconds with a very avant-garde style to it, only to go away and introduce Paul McCartney's Carefree verse. You have another crescendo, and then John Lennon hops back in the track. It's a very simple song. The structure of the track isn't really all that complicated. However, even though it's a very simple song, I believe that it has an added layer of mystery, and that's what makes a track so memorable and so special for a lot of people. I believe it's the closest thing we have to a dream-made song, or a song that shows you how it feels to be on a dream. You don't know what's going on, everything feels out of place, but at the same time there's this order behind everything that feels comforting. It feels like I'm dreaming every time I'm listening to this song, and for that reason I'm gonna put it at number 1. I believe that this is one of the greatest pieces of music ever created. There's very few songs that make me feel so fulfilled as this song makes me feel, and that is reason why I believe that no other song, not only in Sgt. Pepper's but in the Beatles' entire discography, should be compared to this track. There's times when you're listening to something, and as you're listening to it, you have an epiphany. You feel things you've never felt before, and even though it's hard to explain, and a lot of you guys in the comments are going to say that I'm exaggerating, that is exactly what I felt when I listened to the song for the first time. And hopefully, if you've never listened to the song, which is kind of crazy if you haven't because it's one of the most popular songs ever made, you'll feel the same thing, and you'll understand why is it that people are so passionate when they're talking about this song. That is going to be it for today's video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. Once again, I have to remind you guys, this is only my personal opinion, so if you have your own, and I'm pretty sure you do, go ahead and leave your comment down below. Leave your own list down there so we can all see it and give me your opinion on my list. Also, if you want me to make this sort of video with any other album, if you want me to check out a song or an artist, go ahead and leave it down below as well, and I'll make sure to check it out and fulfill your request as soon as I can. With that being said, once again, I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I hope that I can see you soon with a new video. But until then, bye.